Hi, this is Shaine from What's Happening, episode 101. Really crazy with the numbers, how they're not aligned right. Great. Um, so I'm happy to have Cam from the Make Liberty Great Again podcast with us, or with me today. Excuse me. Jeez. I have a ghost next to me. That's why I said with us.
Yes, it's a very pretty ghost.
Yeah, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I am at the edge of having my fifth child. And so I've spent the last 3 days essentially making space so that I can, because my kids, they're great and they can sleep in their own beds and they'll do that. But the last month, they're like, you know what? I want to sleep in your bed every night. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. So we renovated their rooms a little bit, paint some pictures, and hopefully that will be, I put a TV in there. So hopefully they'll be like, yeah, let's go do that instead of bothering dad.
Wow. No, it's like they're in anticipation of the upcoming child. Yeah.
Well, that and Christmas is coming, and so they, my oldest, like we don't do Santa Claus traditionally. I never did it as a kid. My parents were very, very Christian, and so they never wanted to lie to me. So I never believed in Santa Claus, and so my kids. I want to be able to have that fun. So I've explained to the oldest one, Santa Claus is a game we play. And so, but for some reason, still in his head, he's like, you know what? I need to be good. And they need to make sure that I'm being good by being in the room with them. Because if I'm in the room with them, they know if my younger brother does something bad and they can't blame it on me.
So there's no from Santa type of present. All right. Yeah. And plus, you kind of look like Santa. So, you can play Santa, if you wanted to.
I have been trying to talk my wife into letting me bleach white my beard and my hair for the last 4 years in a row. I think next year's the year, because she said she didn't want pictures of the new baby with me and me looking like Santa Claus. When I was working at a leather store 2-3 years ago, and I met more Santas doing that than I've ever met in my life, because they all come in there because they have to make their own belts, because they don't just, a lot of people don't make big Santa's 3-4 inch belts because no one uses that. And if they do make them for Santas specifically, they're like prohibitively expensive. And so I think I met 7 or 8 Santa Clauses. And one of the guys was maybe 37. And he said that he met one of the older Santa Clauses who was like 65. And he said that man was making over $100,000 a year, because he had started 5 years before doing it. And, he gains the network of being Santa and makes more money. And so he was like, I'm 37. I'm starting this year. By the time I'm 60, I'm hoping I can pull in $200,000, $300,000 a year being Santa. And I was like, wow, that's an idea.
Wow. Man, whatever that guy's doing, he's banking. Like, damn, just playing Santa. Wow, that's crazy.
So I teach Santa how to make his belt, or I used to. That used to be part of my job, and selling all of the leather for Marvel movies. So if you see leather, anything in a Marvel movie for the past 2 or 3 years, I probably touched and sold some part of Captain America's costume, shield, other stuff. So very interesting, but did not pay as well as you might think.
Well, yes, since you mentioned Marvel, I just saw this massive Twitter thread from Disney. They're like, oh yeah, because I think I don't know exactly what it was. Some event was happening.
The Investor Weekend.
Oh yeah, okay, wow, that sounds great. But so yeah, they were saying, oh yeah, we have all this new stuff happening, and they're kind of going, oh, this, da, da, da. And then they went to all their Marvel stuff, and I was just like, wow, like, I mean, part of me just wishes that Endgame was end, like that's it. Yeah, like, because I mean, the title's Endgame, you would think this is it, but I guess, I mean, when you make all that money, why would you stop?
Yeah. And there's so much stuff going on in like the comic book world and movies where things are becoming more like, there's nothing wrong with diversity. Like, but forced diversity is a very obvious thing. And it's like, at this point, I keep seeing these different characters come up, and it's like, oh, like recently I saw a news article about how the new Batman in the comic books is going to be black. And I was just like, doesn't that just kind of make him Black Panther?
I mean, well, if they're gonna do something like that, why don't they just make their own superhero?
Yeah.
You know, instead of like they're gonna become Black Panther, or oh no, they're Bruce Wayne, but in an alternate reality, he's Hispanic or whatever other race than white or whatever, you know, because I guess only white people can be rich. There's never other diversity people. I mean, look, Oprah Winfrey is a massive example. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Yeah, so it's interesting too because I think one of the announcements that got a lot of like focus was that they weren't going to recast Black Panther because Chadwick Boseman passed away sadly.
Yeah.
And one of my first thoughts was, you know, because they kind of gave the reason, well, we're not going to do it because we want to like, you know, keep his
the world of Wakanda.
Yeah, we're going to explore the world of Wakanda, exactly. And so I was just thinking, well, I mean, the guy didn't die, but they did replace him. And so like Terrence Howard was in Iron Man 1. And then whatever happened there, whatever story you believe, he hasn't been in any of the other Marvel movies since then. Don Cheadle replaced him. So it's like, okay, well, maybe they can replace him with, I don't know, maybe they can replace him with someone else, you know? But I guess they decided not to. And I mean, it's really just about the characters because it's like with Wolverine, you know, people are going to really only know that, oh, Wolverine is Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. That's pretty much it, right? But then you have like James Bond, and multiple people have played James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, so what was your thoughts on all that?
Well, I do feel like I'm in the it's a pun, an accidental pun that's about to come out of my mouth, but I feel like I'm in the minority opinion on this because the moment Chadwick Boseman died, I kind of had that, you know, horrifying human moment of what are they going to do with Black Panther?
Yeah.
Which, you know, shouldn't be at the forefront of your mind, but it was, you know, it's a curiosity. And like my thing has been, I want them to recast Black Panther because, I mean, I understand that he passed away. He did a really good job with that, even if he was a little boring of a character. If I'm being honest, I didn't find him particularly compelling.
Yeah.
It's the character itself. But my first thought was I think they should recast him because there are a lot of stories that Black Panther would be in that would be good. I mean, at one point, T'Challa married Storm from the X-Men in the comic books. At another point, there was like, so, you know, you have the different superhero groups like the Avengers, Fantastic Four. What are the ones that are in space? They had a show that didn't go very well. I can't remember the name of that one.
You know, I think it was Guardians of
Humans.
Oh, okay.
Inhumans. Okay. And so kind of I think it may have been in the actual like comic book Civil War timeline. You see Professor X, T'Challa, Reed Richards, not Captain America, Iron Man, and Doctor Strange, and they're kind of like the group that comes together that are all the leaders of these smaller groups to decide what they do together, how they, you know, go against bigger, more universal threats. And that's very interesting. And it's not something you can really touch on without T'Challa.
Yeah.
So like my thing is, yes, it's sad that he died, but I feel like it's kind of a weird sentimentalism that you can't recast him with someone else and tell those same stories. Cause I feel like you're going to lose some of the gravitas of those different stories that you could get if you just throw Shuri in or someone else. You're not going to have that same strength of character that the Black Panther had.
Yeah, and they're probably going to just kill him off screen or something like that. You know, oh, he died. And
I heard what they're going to do is have Shuri, which I don't know if it's true, but like one of the speculations is that Shuri is going to go, you know, when he went into that kind of limbo realm where he saw his dad.
Yeah.
And there were all of the different literal Black Panthers on the tree, that they're just going to have him be one of the Black Panthers in the tree. She's going to go into that realm or something. But I don't know how you play it without recasting. And I don't know. I don't think it's the good idea to just give up on that character so early, but who knows? We'll see. I have very little hope for the new crop of movies, if I'm being honest, except for Spider-Man. That one, I think, has some promise.
Yeah, because from what I remember, they're at least as far as I know, they've been bringing back a lot of the characters from the other Spider-Man movies. Like Tobey Maguire, I think, is going to be in there. They just announced Alfred Molina is going to come back as Doctor Octopus.
Yeah, and Jamie Foxx is supposed to reprise his role as Electro, and so there's talk about Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back. But I don't know why they're not just saying it at this point, because if they don't do it now, they've put themselves in such a hole.
Yeah,
like it's gonna blow up on them.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like they're trying to do this. I don't know if they're trying to bring all the alternate realities together or something. I don't know how that's going to go, but I would think that's the avenue I would think they would go, is that, oh, all these other Spider-Mans, we are one character, but I'm, like the what's his name, the one that's in now, the guy that's playing him now,
Tom Holland.
Yeah, Tom Holland. It's his Peter Parker, then Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire. Some kind of alternate reality happen where the space-time continuum is all screwed up or whatever.
Yeah.
And so all the villains are banding together and they're going to destroy the world. Well, now all these Spider-Man's so something like that.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I'm going to nerd out on you. I didn't know this was going to happen, but I'm always prepared for this. So in Endgame, you remember that Loki took the Tesseract that they were trying to take from that specific timeline.
I believe so, yeah.
And so when they were trying to get all the stones together, they went to get the Tesseract, the Space Stone, and then to get it from when they were in New York during the events of the Avengers. And so they messed up, and the Tesseract fell out, and Loki picked it up and disappeared. And so that is going to be what the Loki show is about. It's going to be that timeline. And so that's one branching timeline off of the universe as it is now. And so when you mix that in with the name of the Doctor Strange movie is going to be Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
And when you look at the success of Into the Spider-Verse, it's like they've got to do it now. Yeah. Like there's and especially if they want to bring Venom into the Tom Holland universe, because like Venom was a character and all of his powers were derived from like attaching onto someone and taking their strengths and amplifying them. And so his ability to do the web swinging and crawl on the walls and all that was tied to Spider-Man. That's how his look came about, was he was supposed to be kind of the opposite of Spider-Man, because Spider-Man had the black suit at first.
Yeah. And
so like they have those movies, but they've lost the explanation as to why he looks like Spider-Man. And so they kind of need to, I think they need to multiverse it to bring that together, which I think is what they're pushing for, at least on the Sony end of things.
Yeah, that would be a pretty interesting plot, I think.
Yeah.
It's I mean, because like for me, I'm not too, I don't know as much about the comic books as probably you do. And when it comes to all this stuff, I'm kind of just basing it off of the movies.
Yeah.
And
I know less than Eric July though.
yeah. He's like a master at all that stuff, isn't he? Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when like Iron Man came out, and thinking back then, I mean, now I remember, I can't exactly the year it came out, but thinking now,
2008. Isn't it crazy that I know these numbers?
I know it's ridiculous, but it's also kind of like, man, I kind of wish Blade was in this whole thing too, because Blade would have been badass, in this whole thing with the Wesley Snipes movies and all that. Maybe not the sequels, but the first one for sure was kind of.
They're making a Blade film, right?
Oh yeah, with what's his name, Mahershala Ali or something like that. Yeah,
which would be a good time to do the multiverse thing, because Sony is doing. Jared Leto is leading a movie about was it Morbius, the living vampire, which is a character from Spider-Man, and so it's in Spider-Man's universe. So if they do kind of some multiverse things, you could potentially see Blade hunting him, which would be a pretty all-star matchup, I think. It'd be a good way to start the Blade movies is to have him try to kill Jared Leto.
Yeah, I guess Jared Leto's trying to. I wasn't the Joker. I swear. I don't know what we were talking about.
Oh God! I remember when the first picture of the Joker came out, and I was like, I'm not watching it. I don't want to watch it. I have no interest in this. Ooh, I laughed and my camera wiggled. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have a bowl full of jelly for a stomach.
Yeah, because now like Suicide Squad 2 is coming out with James Gunn directing that, and then he's gonna also do the Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I can't wait for that one to come out whenever that does actually come out. I mean, I enjoyed in my opinion, I think the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies are definitely in the top 5, just in terms of enjoyment.
Like in terms of character, yes, I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie is great. The second one disappointed me because it seemed like they didn't know there was. I'm going to go in. I used to, before I got a degree in biblical studies, I studied film, and particularly screenwriting.
Yeah.
And so when I watched the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie, it was the first time I watched a Marvel movie when I looked at my watch to see what time it was, because there was no goal of the movie. And so it was like, I don't know where they're going, what's time this is. And character-wise, great. But I was just like, there's no story here. There's nothing driving the plot. And so I thought that was a bad, not bad, but I think of the 2, the first one's stronger than the second one for sure.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I agree with that too. But I think with the second one, maybe they were just trying to give more of a backstory to Star-Lord's character and everything like that. So it was definitely focusing on him as opposed to just the entire group as a whole.
Yeah. I just think that if they had spent the movie trying to find his father instead of just running into him, it would have been a lot better.
Like maybe they had stretched out that path instead of, they met him 20 minutes into it. Now we have another an hour and 40 to see what's going on. Yeah, maybe like an hour into it, then that would have worked a little better. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So to kind of like tie this to, I guess, the modern times, not just like superheroes and all that stuff. I mean, when it comes to superheroes, I mean, there are superheroes here in the real world. You have all the healthcare workers. I mean, they're superheroes, right? So those are superheroes of that.
Donald Trump.
Oh well, that's for another live stream. That's for
I don't know if you. Let me move my microphone because I found this flag on the side of the road. Someone was selling it, and I laughed so hard when I found it because one, the people on the right truly see Trump like this, and the people on the left will get angry. But I have Rambo Trump on my wall.
Oh wow, that's crazy. That's pretty much. I mean, it's like that one picture where we see Donald Trump on that tank, and there's all the explosions and the bald eagles. Yeah, that's what that reminds me of.
Makes me laugh every time I look at it. But I guess I'm gonna have to change, my background because my "Don't Tread on Me" with Joe Biden's face over the snake.
Oh, you should put that right next to that.
He's gonna have to stand in place of Mr. Trump here.
Yeah, I know. With his presidency just right around the corner. It's interesting too because, and there's been people that are saying this, and I know Dave Smith tweeted about it, and I kind of like get where he's coming from, and I agree with him too. Where it wasn't about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump thinks, oh, it's just about me and everyone loves me and whatever. It's like, well, they do love you, but it's like also. It's like the caricature of that guy where he's supposed to be this outsider or someone is supposed to throw a hand grenade into the building and boom, it's going to explode or something like that. That's him, right?
Yeah.
But it more or less, and whatever your position is, whatever. Like for me personally, I don't think he's anything that different in terms of
no.
I mean, like, just him being there, that's awesome. Just him being there because everyone was flipping out, and the corporate press, because everybody looks at the corporate press completely different maybe not completely different, but at least some people, it's kind of like had like a light switch in them, like, oh wow, maybe the corporate press isn't on my side.
Well, and I think when it comes to Donald Trump, there were good things that he's done, like toppling Hillary Clinton's chances of ever being president. That's a good thing. Ending even the supposed Bush dynasty by taking out Jeb. And he hasn't made any new wars. He's continued some, and that pisses me off. But, I like to tweet at him now. I'm like, well, since Joe's leaving, just screw him and the deep state on the way out there, pull all the troops out. That way, if he wants more wars, he actually has to send them back, and it's all on him. And so, like, I think he delegitimizes the office of the presidency in a way that's very healthy, because especially since I'm going to say Reagan, like, even though, I mean, what's his name? Clinton had some trouble with his sexual life that kind of pulled out. But everyone, these people put on their suits to do the old mafia trick of, look how presentable and respectable I am. And people be like, oh, yeah, bomb whoever you want. But Trump kind of put an end to that concept, at least somewhat in the left's mind.
Yeah.
Because at first they said he was going to nuke people, and then he didn't. And then the first time they ever called him presidential was when he bombed, where was it? Syria?
Yeah, I believe
was it when he dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whatever it was, they didn't think he was presidential until he was capable of killing people. And then since then, they've tried their best to stop him from pulling troops out from around the world. Like and that's what was frustrating, is my older brother moved out to California 10 years ago. And before that, I mean, we were raised in the same home. We thought pretty much Reagan Republican-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he moved to California, and I've been everywhere in the world at this point. I've moved probably 7 times in the last 7 years.
Wow.
But, I had my little Ron Paul moment with Ron Paul in 2010, maybe something like that. And so, like, I went in this very different trajectory, and he moved to California and went further and further left. So this has been a frustration for me, because right before the election, like, I wasn't going to vote, and I didn't, but I don't buy into that. I don't believe it. I don't want to be a part of it, because I did vote for Trump in 2016 as a middle finger to Hillary Clinton. And then shortly after he took office, he killed Nora Al-Awlaki in a little, not sting, I don't know what word, siege, I guess.
Yeah.
And that little girl was 8 years old, and she bled out on the floor after being shot in the neck. And I was like, I voted for that guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of on my hands.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, I'm done. But before this election, I had a conversation with my brother, and we talked about police, we talked about military, and he said, I think we're on the same page. I think, because I said, the most important thing to me is going to be foreign policy. I want to see less dead bodies overseas that I have to pay for. And when we had that conversation, he was like, oh no, I agree totally. That's what's number one for me too. And then he voted for Joe Biden, which is that's just a return to the Obama years, the Bush years. He's just a neoconservative, essentially. And so it was one of those things where, like, right now, I'm like, I love my brother, but by God, he lied to me. And it's frustrating to me. But no, like, Trump definitely delegitimized the offices of the presidency. He let everyone have a laugh at the system. He called the left freaked out and started to question certain things just because Trump did them. Like when they were first starting the vaccine stuff for COVID, like even I think it was Kamala Harris came out and said that she wouldn't take the vaccine because it was from Trump.
Yeah.
And, you know, all these different things. So there's some good on the left in that they stopped trusting the president, the office of the presidency explicitly. And there's so much chaos that's been caused by Trump that I think is good in summation. But right now, there are a lot more conservatives talking about secession than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah, that is a pretty cool revelation, right? That
Yeah.
maybe 4 years ago when Donald Trump came in, secession probably wasn't even the vocabulary. Now with all this election stuff happening and they stole it from us, blah 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 blah. Now they're like, hey, maybe that secession thing. Hey, roll it back. Let's listen to that more, you know. But there is that God complex too with Trump, where I mean, where are these people going to be in 50 years? Are they still going to be talking about Donald Trump? He's still my president.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know how that's going to shake out. I think that really what Donald Trump was to those who were hardcore Trump people, he wasn't so much, it wasn't the person, but he was an avatar taking on their very real enemies, the people who want them to lose their jobs if they microaggress. He's against, like, he got rid of critical race theory in the federal government. I mean, he was very much taking on things that these people worried about. You know, Tulsi Gabbard put in a bill the other day. I don't know if you saw this, where she wants to end transgender people from being able to do play sports with the opposite biological sex.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
it's like, boy, she's swinging for the fences on the way out. Like, what an amazing, weird, wonderful woman who I hope is drawn. Like, I saw a picture of her with Michael Malice the other day.
Oh yeah, I saw that too.
And I was like, maybe she's this close.
Maybe. Yeah, because I mean, she still has a lot of those, left wing kind of socialist tendencies about, Medicare for all, and at least I'm pretty sure she's for Medicare for all. But she has a lot of those left wing type of tendencies. But yeah, she's doing some things just like the example you were mentioning, where you see people on Twitter just calling her out, calling her a transphobe and all this stuff. And it's something that she's probably had to deal with her entire life, at least for her entire political life, because I think her father had. Yeah.
There's the other one was she put in a bill to protect babies who unborn babies who I guess didn't die from abortions. She wants to protect those who are born alive, and that's like the farthest from the typical democratic concept. Like, yeah, you're right. Her dad was a pastor, and early on she had I don't know if she explicitly said it or it was just because of who her father was, but he was for conversion therapy. And then she apologized for that years ago and said, that's not what I think now, that's what I thought then, I've learned, etc. But I mean, she's had to deal. I mean, she was called a was it The View, where they called her a sod toady. No. That was actually what's that woman that went on? She was on Joe Rogan's show. Barry Weiss.
I think it was Barry. Yeah, Barry Weiss, I believe. Yeah.
And who called her an Assad toady, but she didn't know what the word toady meant.
Yeah, because Joe Rogan was like pushing back on it. I was like, well, what does that mean? And she's like,
I don't know. Well, can you give me an example?
Yeah. If you're gonna call someone a name, at least kind of know what the definition is, or
know what that word means.
Yeah. It's like, back up your stuff. Come on.
We live in the weirdest and best and worst timeline. It's like there's in my show, I've been talking, and it's because of Malice, but I've been talking a lot about white pills and black pills and where people are, because there are a lot of people I know that are very doomer minded right now. Yeah. For these people, there's no winning. Violence is the answer. And that's something that I have to push against, because I did cynicism back in the day. I don't do it anymore because it's not healthy and only leads to bad places, in my opinion. So it's like, I believe in preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. I think that a lot of times these people that I talk to who are doomers have put all of their hopes and expectations into the wrong baskets. They've placed a lot of their hope into like political change.
Yeah.
And so when they see how politics are going, when they see what looks very much like a very, I don't know if the election was stolen or not, it looks pretty fishy. But when people are seeing that and seeing that it doesn't matter if they vote, that's very good for those who've believed in the system. But for people that I've known that say they don't believe in the system, I feel like it betrays that they held some sort of faith in the idea that the system itself could change and become better or not get worse. And I think that that's where a lot of the doomerism comes from, is from people who, even though they didn't love Donald Trump and they didn't love the wars that he continued or this, that, or the other, but they saw him kind of how Dave Rubin saw him, as kind of the last bastion of free speech, of against cancel culture, against this, that, or the other.
Right.
And they found out very swiftly that they didn't have much say in the matter, even though they said that they didn't want say. I don't know, but I think that's where the doomerism comes from. Do you think that that's a correct assumption, or?
Well, yeah, because I was just going to mention that with your, or at the very least, bring that up, was because you did, like you were saying, you've been talking about just pills and everything, like like Tylenol and Advil and all that good stuff. But no, like with being not, because you're saying that you're not black pilled, and because you said, like you were saying, you did do that before, or at least you had that mindset, and then you changed. And I mean, you see like the violence in the streets, with the Antifa and the Proud Boys thing that's going on as of this recording. And it's funny because I've been having these thoughts in my head, kind of looking at all this, and I'm just thinking, well, Antifa is, they're a pretty decent sized group, I would think, right? I mean, there's plenty of people out there that think that Donald Trump's a fascist and all that stuff. Okay, well, that's their opinion. That's fine. And then you have the Proud Boys, who are basically there pretty much on, I guess, the opposite end, where they're like, no, Donald Trump is the greatest person ever, and we're going to defend him no matter what. Because you see other people talking about it. Because I've seen a lot of more the right wing people being, the election was stolen from us and blah 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 and all that. Yeah. And I'm kind of just wondering, like, is that going to be the only way that a drastic type of change is going to happen, is just this violence? Because I mean, you see the cops, they're kind of just laying around as, whatever. Okay. We'll just wait and see what happens, because I don't want to get killed, I got a family to feed and all that stuff. Yeah. And I don't know, just because I was also thinking about this too. And I mean, I don't know how this is going to go off to some of the libertarian audience that we have and with you that's here. But I'm kind of thinking, well, what if back in 2008 or 2012, Ron Paul had this, he had this massive following, all those people shouting end the Fed and all that stuff, right? But I'm wondering, what if that also devolved into some kind of like Antifa or Proud Boys type of mentality in the streets? Because you had Occupy Wall Street and you had the Tea Party. That was kind of like the thing then, because now it's with Antifa and Proud Boys. But I don't, and I'm sure someone's going to be like, you're wrong. You know what you're talking about. I don't really remember the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street being this, and it's probably because we're living in a social media age, so maybe because we're just kind of exposed to it more, we see it. But I don't remember them being all that violent as opposed to what we're seeing now. And so I'm kind of wondering, what if like the Ron Paul Revolution was something like that? What if the Ron Paul Revolution was this there were these groups of people out in the street chanting and yelling and even causing violence of some kind? Yeah.
Well, I think when it comes to the Ron Paul revolution, which is, like I've said a bunch of times, that I think that I don't call it the Liberty movement anymore. Yeah. Because I feel like it died after Ron Paul's last run in 2012. And it's been kind of in a place where it was forming, some parts of it formed in this way. The LP still stayed the turd that it is. But I think that the difference, especially when it comes, I don't remember any violence between Occupy Wall Street or the Ron Paul people or the Tea Party, because maybe there was, but it definitely wasn't as widespread, I don't think. Yeah. And I think when it comes to Ron Paul and the movement that came out of out of him was at the center of that movement, at the center of the primary thrust of his message was peace.
Right.
And so it didn't typically at that point draw people who wanted more war. It didn't. I think that what we're seeing right now is an increased radicalism on both sides. Of course, there's going to still be the people in the middle, a lot of them who don't know what's going on, don't care what's going on. But as time progresses, there has been a more radicalization of both sides and a bigger split and divide between people, which I think is actually like it's very. I'll coin a word, Malician, is that we want this to break down. We want people to realize that we don't have to try and fight to rule each other, because a lot of times, if you really look at these elections, it's kind of wars without the bloodshed. And I think it's crazy to me that the right or the left would just roll over when they have someone picked to rule them that they abhor completely. And I think that was a big thing about Trump was before he ran for president, it didn't matter. He was friends with everyone, and everyone seemed to like him.
Right.
But then as soon as he ran for president, he was a fascist. He wanted to do this and that. Like all of their examples of his fascism, of his hatred of different races, all of that stuff, it all comes out of a corporate media narrative.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a place where the corporate media has stoked these tensions so strongly now that people are starting to react more and more. And also the corporate media is breaking down. So they don't know where to get the real news because, some people on the far left are going to say that CNN is backing up Trump or supporting him. And I've seen people say that. And so they are going, we are our alternative media. You and I are.
Yeah.
I think we're more preaching peace than anyone else when it comes to like our specific subset of podcasters and stuff like that. But that's an important thing that we need to emphasize, because a lot of these people are looking for alternative media, and a lot of that alternative media just backs up their assumptions and then says we have to have a revolution, we have to have this fight, we have to physically do something, which has been like today I tweeted out, I think it was today, maybe it was yesterday, about how if you're seeing the division that we're seeing right now in the country and your first go-to isn't we should have a peaceful divorce, we should separate peacefully, but instead goes to we should have a civil war, you're not thinking like an adult. Because if your first reaction to adversity is violence, that's very childlike. And I think one of the things that I really hope to do when I talk, when I have my show, when I tweet, is to show people, one, yes, I mock the people that want to control our lives. That's like one of my favorite things to do. And I want people to know that they don't have to hold in high regard murderers and horrible people. I want people to go, oh, wait, I don't have to listen to the president.
Yeah.
But I think we need to reassert the concept of peace as much as we can, because people are looking for blood right now. And I think that for a lot of people, they haven't had the realization that freedom of association can exist on a larger scale than just you and your friends. Like if California doesn't want us to rule them on this side of the country, we can do this peacefully. You take your money, and of course, I think the economy would reset after, we lost all the federal dollars from California, but, take your ball and go home. That is way healthier than trying to control people that you're 1,500, 3,000 miles away from, don't know, and you disagree about how to run their life.
Yeah.
I think it's just much healthier to look at a peaceful solution and a peaceful separation than having a civil war. Why does there have to be a civil war? Is it just because Lincoln invaded the South 160 years ago? Is that just so ingrained and indoctrinated in people now that they think the only way there can be secession and peaceful or in separation is through battle. Like, why is that the go-to? And I think that's going to be, it's a white pill for me. And it's one that Malice talks about, but I talk about it too much. But that's something that I'm going to push, because I think there are a lot of people who see violence as the answer. And if we don't set the stage by saying, let's try peace first, we can do this peacefully, we're just going to get lost into that hellhole of that violent spiral that people want you to subscribe to now. Like, they want you to want to fight your neighbor. I don't want to fight my neighbor.
Yeah.
I just want them to not control me, and I want to be able to ignore them.
And I'm sure they feel the same way with you. Like, I don't want that guy to tell me what to do. I mean, this is my house, you know?
Yeah. And that's why I found out the worst app ever created is the Nextdoor app. I don't know if you've ever been on it.
No, I haven't, but I listened to this podcast called Everybody's Awful Except You, and it's with Jim Florentine. And he hasn't done it in a while, but one of the segments that, or like one of the topics that he'll talk about for an episode is the Nextdoor app and all the reviews in it. So he'll read one and then he'll make fun of it.
It is the worst app, because like if you lose your dog, it's a good app to have.
Right.
But it's like, if I recommend going, like, they're like getting verified in it is kind of stupid and kind of a pain in the butt. But if you go in there just one day, I promise within the first 5 posts, you'll see someone complaining about people in your local grocery store, that the percentage of people wearing masks is too low. Or how, like, the other day, I went in the app, and I keep it just for scientific purposes at this point. But
sure you do. Sure you do.
the guy was complaining. Oh, no. He said, stop helping your neighbors. You don't know if they have COVID or not.
So I guess if your neighbor's having a heart attack and there's no one there to call 911, he might have COVID.
Yeah. Like, don't help your elderly neighbor who can't go shopping for herself, because you might give her coronavirus. She can't leave, of course, to get her own groceries, but you need to stop. And it's like, these are the worst people. It's like, I would much rather have not known how many, all of them almost, are petty tyrants. I wish I could live in the bliss that was, they didn't think about me, I didn't think about them.
Yeah, and if you're going to help your elderly neighbor or something like that, you know, maybe wear a mask, you know, because they are more susceptible. Their immune system isn't as good as the 30-year-old. I mean, come on, it's simple science, right? I mean, we got to trust the science. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I don't know what the big problem is with you know, doing that. If you're friendly with them, or they know you or something like that. It's not just you're some random guy. Hey, you want your grocery? Do you need your groceries? I can go get them for you. Like, well, who are you? I don't know what you're talking about.
But that's what was so funny, was the name on the title of the post was "Stop Helping Your Elderly Neighbors," and I was just like, wow, what world do I live in right now?
Someone should have replied to them like, so you do want your grandma to die, like,
right?
You want your grandma to die? Then okay, I see how it is.
Yeah, if you want to see a real, like, people call Twitter a cesspool, but it pales in comparison to that app. Like, I would say don't download it, but if you want to see it, because I was talking to someone about that the other day, and they were like, oh no, you know, I've seen from the news reports how bad people have been about the masks and this and that and the other. And I'm like, no, no, I've seen the same things. If you go into that app, you see a level of it that you don't want to see. It's like, I guess they can live within Schrodinger's Nextdoor app, where it's worse or better. They're just not going to open it.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of insane.
Yeah, it blew my mind. That do not help your elderly neighbors. Oh, okay. I'm going to go ahead and ignore that.
Yeah. Because I guess they think when they do that, everyone's gonna be like, oh, like they'll get like some applause, or someone be hand clapping or something like that. And then they're like, hey, what's your real name? I want to send you a gift because I really liked your thing about not helping your elderly neighbors during a time of COVID-19. Yeah, what's your address? I'm going to send you a $50 gift card.
Yeah. What a bizarre, but we really do live in this incredibly strange timeline. It's like one of my oldest friends had a baby a month ago, maybe. And she put up pictures of her parents meeting the baby for the first time. And they were wearing masks. Her parents were, to hold the baby. And I had this moment where I was like, because I'd also seen some wedding pictures where people had specially embroidered masks that said Mr. and Mrs. and they made that part of their wedding photos. And I'm like, do you really want to remember your wedding or your first baby's birth with this awful year and all of the trappings of pandemic? Like, is that something you want to remember forever? Or do you just want to have the joy of seeing your parents hold your kid for the first time, or that kiss on your wedding day? I guess I don't get it. That why would you want to keep that?
Yeah, and those are probably the same people that are like, man, 2020, I want to forget about that year. And then
Right.
the same people that will be wearing their mask in their wedding photo and when they're with their, that is kind of weird. It's kind of a weird. It's weird because I mean, for me personally, when I go to a grocery store, I mean, I'll wear a mask. Sorry, I'm not radical enough. Ooh, oh, sorry, but I will wear a mask, and I mean, Nico will wear one too, and I mean, we have situations where we feel we need to do that because of our personal life and all that stuff. But that's not for everyone. Not everybody's going to want to do that, and we understand that. We get that. Hey, this person doesn't want to wear a mask. Okay, I'm not going to force them to do that.
Right. And I think there's like, I have friends who are very radical about the mask thing. Luckily I live in Florida. So right now the governor just a few days ago renewed the order that the localities and municipalities couldn't enforce mask mandates or different things like that. So they can't charge people money or fine them for not wearing a mask. And so we live in, and I don't know how it is in Texas, but in Florida, it's a little bit freer. And so like I'll have the mask on me because kind of my take on it is I won't wear it if I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I do respect property rights. So if a company or a store that I go to says, please wear a mask while you're in our store, I feel like I'm respecting their property rights by doing so. But at the same time, I do have to be asked because this is a vulnerability that I don't like to share with people. But if I have anything covering my mouth or nose and my face, like I have anxiety that just ramps up over time. It's like I will ride a motorcycle, and I do, but I won't wear a full face helmet because I can't handle breathing on myself. I guess I get like weird claustrophobia from that or something.
Yeah.
But like, so it's weird because like I've done dangerous things. I like motorcycles. I would jump out of a plane or swim with sharks, but don't make me put a mask on my face because I freak out. It's such a bizarre thing. But one of the things that is great about Florida is since there's not that police force and the fines for it, is there's an underlying understanding with companies now. And I think it came from when Walmart first said, Sam's Club, Walmart, you cannot come into the store without a mask.
Right.
And Walmart is a great testing ground for this because they don't allow, like, everyone goes to Walmart, but it is a place for those who have slightly less class than other people, to put it kindly.
Yeah.
And so I think from what I could tell, I heard stories of people getting in fights at Walmart after being told to put on a mask. And then Walmart kind of across the board said, hey, if someone doesn't wear a mask, just don't say anything to them, because they didn't want their associates to get into physical altercations with people.
I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like Michael's, a friend of mine, I forget who told me this, but she found out that if she goes into Michael's that the associates have been told not to say anything if someone's not wearing a mask. And so a lot of that does have to do with like what the government has said and what enforcement there's been. And it is contingent on whether or not they'll get backup from the state, whether or not they'll react to you wearing a mask or not.
Yeah.
But it's been great being in Florida because the first time I decided to take off my mask, Well, it wasn't a mask. I had I'll use a bandana, and that way I can just kind of peel it down and not have to worry about weirdness because I gotta breathe. But
Right.
I walked into Sam's Club and I decided not to wear a mask. And the lady at the front desk didn't tell me to wear a mask or ask me to wear a mask. She goes, "Oh, hey, do you need a mask?" And I said, "Oh, no, thank you." And the dumbfounded look on that woman's face was excellent. Like she was just like, "Wait, what do you mean you don't? But you don't have one. Why wouldn't you need one?" It was like she was trying to do the math in her head.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I've walked through stores without it because they don't like. Once I learned they don't actually care that much, and they're doing it for appearances, and they want to signal. It's kind of a woke capitalism thing. They want to signal to people that they are playing the same game they are.
Yeah.
But they won't say anything to you. What's funny is people you walk down the aisle and you don't have one on your face, and you'll see people like look at you and realize, oh wait, I can take this thing off, and then they'll just take it off and smile, and it's incredible. And I think I kind of my take in it, like I said, I believe in property rights, but I do think that when it comes to, the vaccine makes me nervous because of it's the mRNA vaccine that tinkers with your genetic code.
That's weird, yeah.
And the mask thing, like these are all, whether you are okay with it or not, or no matter how strong your conviction about masks is, which is weird that we have convictions about masks these days, it is a sign that you are, for the left, it's a sign that you are playing the same game, that you're on the same side, that you're fighting this thing together. And on the right, it's more of a sign of submission. You're submitting to people who want to control your lives.
Yeah.
And I think that I definitely don't want to signal submission. And so kind of the lockdowns and things like that, once they're not going to end until we decide they end. And so me not having a mask in a place that doesn't care if I have a mask on or not is a very small gesture. And you see people smile at you. And it's weird, like walking through a store and seeing someone smile at you. Like it's something that you've seen your whole life and didn't think twice. You just kind of smirk and move on.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh my God, a face.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a face. It's like, I feel so badly for like newborn babies and old people at this point who aren't able to see the faces of the people who love them the most. And I mean, especially babies, because they have to learn how to communicate. I mean, they have to learn how to talk. They have to watch you talk. They have to be able to read your emotions and know how they learn how to emote and what different facial emotions mean. I mean, they'll make them naturally, but they learn how to read them, and then they're going through a world where they can't see anyone's face. And so that's a little sad to me. But it's like, what was the name of that pub up in New York that decided they were an autonomous zone? Did you hear about that?
Oh, yeah, I think so. But yeah, I don't remember the name of it. Yeah.
I forget the name of, and there was another place out in California that's kind of doing some stuff. And there was the one in the Adamson barbecue, I think in Toronto, that was pushing against it. But it's like these little acts of rebellion, I think, are very important right now. And I think my friend Paul told me that these acts of rebellion, these rejection of the lockdowns in particular, are happening more than we realize, and the corporate press just isn't sharing the stories unless it gets so big that they have to.
Well, yeah, because they'll only report on, oh, did you see there's 3,000 more deaths yesterday from COVID? That's what they'll report. But yeah, like when it comes to those type of stories, they'll just ignore, or they'll talk shit about it or something like that, you know? Yeah.
And so I'm in one of those places where I think it's important to take care of your people, important to take care of the elderly when you can, to not hurt anyone if you can help it. But at the same time, I do think that there needs to be some space for defiance, because it's a very American thing, is defiance and saying no, saying, you can't control me. And I think that as long as you are doing your best to do it safely, that's a net positive for America, the liberty movement, etc. So like I am very pro taking off the mask. I'm very pro opening up your store or your gym or your tattoo shop. That was one that threw me off, was how many tattoo shops just kind of bowed down. Like these are the counterculture people who draw inject ink into people's arms for a living, and yet they're the first to go, no, we'll stay closed. We don't have to make any money. Like you'd think that those angsty Gen Xers would have been a little louder about it, but they were just like, okay.
Yeah, maybe they're going to do some kind of black market thing. It's, hey, you can come to our house, just don't tell anyone.
Yeah. And I'm sure there was a lot of that, but we just didn't hear about it.
Well,
they didn't want it to spread.
Well, there was that famous salon, that famous story with that salon owner where she was like, I'm going to open my business, blah, blah, blah. And then like, oh, how dare you? You're going to kill people, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Well, this woman's, she has a business. It's her livelihood. She needs to make money to feed her family. We'll give you a stimulus check in the future. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, which one came.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think that the vernacular of non-essential businesses is really harmful, I think, to the human psyche, and especially to people who are trying to feed their families and can't and aren't allowed to.
Right.
And so that's one of the things, like I definitely believe that those who have little mouths to feed have to be able to say, no, I'm going to work anyway. I'm going to open up my business. I think that that's a very important thing that's happening. And I guarantee you it's happening more than we even know about. And every time I see one that happens, on Twitter, I'll share their Facebook page or not their Facebook page, their Twitter profile, and be like, hey, buy a shirt from these people. Yeah. Because people need to know that it's okay to feed your children. Like, it's okay. You don't have to let your, like, I have a friend whose brother committed suicide because he lost his job. And so I do think that not necessarily counter signaling, but having the counter narrative and pointing out to people that they don't have to just bend and submit and lose their lives and livelihood is very important right now. So. Yeah,
for sure. And, with all the, with all the like big businesses, and Walmart being a prime example, as you mentioned before, but Walmart, Amazon, I mean, they're doing great because people are staying home, they're not going out as much, and when they need stuff, they're gonna go online and get it from Amazon. I mean, people have been doing it anyway, but apparently more people are doing it now. So Amazon's like, oof, man, we're getting all that bank, man, this is great. But then that small business in downtown small city, they got to go along with what's happening, or else they're forced to shut down.
Yeah, we were living in Pennsylvania. We'd moved up there to work with my friend Ryan, who has a show called Techno Agorist. And we lived there from, I think we made it, we were up there 7 months. It hit March. We came down to Florida for a business meeting, and our skin cleared up because it was not as dry down here. And I was born in a subtropical climate. And my body is very used to specific things. Yeah. So like we came down and we were here for like 2 weeks, and like the little bits of my skin that had issues were just healed by the time I got back to Pennsylvania. But we also got what looked like a very unpleasant, strong flu when we went down to Florida. So we and it was one of those things that we didn't have, we could taste, and we didn't have, well, I think a couple of us had some of the more bottom part of the, bottom half of the body issues. But we got back up and I was like, I think we may have had COVID early on, and they just went through our whole family. And, but we got back up there near the end of February, and we were in our house. We had another few months left on our lease. And I was like, I don't like where this thing's going. I'm not sure what's going to happen. There wasn't any lockdowns or masks or anything yet. But I looked at my wife and I was like, I think it's a good time to move to Florida. And she was like, no, I agree. Let's do that. And that day I went to Wawa to pick up a sandwich. And the lady in line in front of me, while she was checking out with the cashier, she looks at me. No, didn't look at me. She looked at the lady and she said, I just wish that Governor Wolf had as big of balls as Andrew Cuomo. And I went, we're moving. And I told Ryan, I said, hey, we're moving. And he was like, okay, you can move. And no one understood why we were doing it. Everyone thought we were a little crazy and it was an overreaction. But like right the day we left is when they first did their lockdown and curfews. Like I think it was a 8 o'clock curfew or something like that, and I was like, oh wow, I guess it's good we're moving. And so we've never had to deal. We saw a lot of the like the city that we live in had some of the mask mandates and stuff, but it was always very light. Like we just stayed at home until the governor DeSantis decided that they couldn't enforce it anymore. But it was like we fared a lot better, and we just left. And then Ryan then moved down himself, and I was like, "You thought I was crazy when I moved that fast, didn't you?" He was like, "Yeah, I think everyone thought you were a little crazy." But he was like, "I get it now. I know why you did it, and that's why I'm doing it."
Yeah, apparently it takes big balls like Andrew Cuomo to be like, "Yeah, curfew 8 o'clock."
Yeah, curfew 8 o'clock. Also, well, Cuomo, because what's funny is like in New York, the Jewish population was like, we're not doing this, and then Andrew was like, okay, let's throw some Jews in prison, and it's like this looks familiar.
Yeah.
But yeah, that woman saying that, I was just like, no, I'm not staying around these people. These are not my people. Let me leave.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy world that we're living in right now, and everybody's just at each other's throats. You know, if you like I see some people saying that if you wear a mask for even a little bit of time, then like you were saying before, you're a sheep and you're just listening to whatever they're telling you. And it's like, well, I mean, I got my medical reasons that I wear the mask, or I feel like I'm I feel like I need to, or I feel like I need to help whatever the reason is, or whatever.
Yeah. Are you around old people?
Yeah, exactly.
Around old people, do what you have to do.
Right. And then there's other people that I see where, I'm not going to wear the mask, and then they're getting criticized, saying, just what's the problem with putting a piece of cloth on your face? Like, I don't understand what the problem is. It's like, well, it starts with that.
Yeah.
Because Joe Biden did say, and who knows if it's going to happen? I don't know, but knowing Joe Biden, I wouldn't put it past him, and I wouldn't put it past Kamala Harris, that cop. So there, he was saying like, 100 days of mask wearing, like a mandate of 100 days of mask wearing. I was like, well, how are you going to enforce that?
Yeah.
Well,
short answer, he can't.
Yeah, but my thing is, well, if he's really going to do this and he's really gung ho on putting a piece of cloth, well, let's say that a piece of cloth on someone's face, so is he going to have like a security officer or the army or the National Guard going up to every business, and be like, "Hey, you're not wearing a mask. If you don't wear a mask, you're going to put you to jail." Yeah. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they just going to be like, "Oh, if we see you doing it, you're going to get fined"? Like if you're in your car and a cop sees you not wearing a mask in your car, you're going to get fined $200. You might go to jail for a couple of weeks, or whatever the punishment they decide to do.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like if you look at, like, they've been talking about, the left has been using Australia as an example of why the United States should get rid of guns and how they should get rid of guns when the time comes.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good place to look at, like, especially Victoria. All of the different measures they've taken for the lockdowns are just so much worse than we have it here. Like none of the states, I mean, I think New York had more deaths per capita than any other place on earth. But if you look at like the military people, like I saw a video of a security guard like smashing a dude's head on the floor for not wearing a mask. And I saw a video of one woman being arrested on the street in Australia for not wearing a mask. And I'm like, of all the places to be, I'm happy I'm where I am.
Yeah.
That's some tyranny and fascism that you don't want. And that was one of the things that I wanted to mention was you're talking about Amazon and Walmart and these big companies. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look from, I guess, around 1920, in the 1920s, when Benito Mussolini set up fascism, it was mostly kind of an economic idea. It's more or less socialism in with a capitalistic veneer, because it's state control of private enterprise. And if you look, I haven't looked deeply into the Great Reset or any of that, or Klaus Schwab, who looks absolutely terrifying. But if you look at the history of the elites, especially in this country, they've always loved economic fascism. And that's always been something that they've pushed. They haven't always. There were some cells of communists in Hollywood and stuff like that. But if you look at the people who are really turning the screws, it's corporatists. It's
Hmm.
because corporatism is just a form of fascism, economic fascism in particular.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the grand scheme of things, it does look like it's more bigger companies, more government control, more regulation, etc. So we live in weird times, man. I can't believe I have to use the word fascism as often as I do, both to dispel what people are calling fascism that isn't, and to say, no, there actually is some right here.
Yeah, and another thing too, kind of talking about just red pilling or something like that, is when kind of all this stuff was happening. Well, not actually all this. It was kind of like when the George Floyd thing happened.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of the conservatives and kind of just more the right wing people being like, "Oh wow, like the cops, man, yeah, maybe we have some problems here." And then of course that just died down because all the BLM and Antifa that kind of just
riots
all
and
that right. But now with this and the examples you're giving of a cop just smashing someone's head in because they're not wearing something on their face, well, it's like, well, that's in Australia, and you see people rebelling and they're not abiding by whatever the mandates are or whatever the rules are they're enforcing for this particular amount of time.
Yeah.
And they're saying who's enforcing that? It's the cops. You're friendly, thin blue line. We love you. Police union type of people. These are the cops they're doing it. They're doing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are some. I do see some that conservatives are like, I think this is definitely a problem. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to acknowledge it because it's like when Michael Malice and Alex Jones were on Tim Pool just recently.
Yeah.
And Michael Malice was telling Alex Jones, "Oh yeah, the cops are." And I'm going to get it wrong, so I apologize. But
I still haven't watched the second half of that. I need to.
Yeah, but he basically tells Alex Jones that all cops are bad and all of them are filth and everything like that. And Alex Jones is like, "Well, I am anti-cop. I am that." But then he kind of goes and gives an explanation about, it's not, the usual type of thing that you hear.
Yeah.
And Mouse is like, well, I think all of them should, they should all die, basically. Just something, basically something along that line. And,
oh boy.
And that also that one video that I saw too, where Michael Mouse is holding a can of Mountain Dew, and I don't exactly know how it went into that, but he's just holding a can of Mountain Dew and goes, "Mountain Dew, it'll make you hate cops." And then Tim Pool is looking at him like,
yeah,
I'm gonna stay quiet on that one.
That's what's so funny is like I loved those recent episodes. I'll watch. I don't watch InfoWars, but I will watch anytime Alex Jones goes on someone else's show.
Yeah, and it's funny because everyone's like, I don't care what Alex Jones says. Well, why does Alex Jones, when he appears on Joe Rogan, have like 20 million views? I guess people don't care.
Yeah, it's so entertaining. But that's been my biggest. Like I love Malice and Alex Jones in the same room, but it's sometimes it's hard because Tim Pool, he does a lot of great work. But I've said it a couple of times. But I think that what Tim, for one, he's kind of in the journalist camp and recognizes himself within the same parameters as like a corporate journalist.
Yeah.
But I think Tim Pool has a blue pill that he puts in the inside of his cheek, and when he gets nervous, he sucks on it because he's so close to being red pilled on the corporate media, but he keeps like pulling back, and so it's one of those things where I'm like, I enjoy that you're doing this, Tim Pool, but I swear if you don't take the red pill soon, I'm gonna go crazy.
Yeah, you see people like that, they'll say something, that Jack Nicholson, and then they'll say something else. You're just like, no, no, why?
Well, it's that but in the sentence, because you can disregard anything before but in any political claim.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I believe in the Second Amendment, but just ignore that first part, because whatever they're saying next is actually what they believe.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, I like Tim Pool. I like what he's pulled together. I love that he put Malice and Alex Jones in the same room and recorded it for us. But it's like, sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm like, come on, dude, just make the leap. You're so close to being there. Just do it. Get there.
Yeah, Malice. I mean, he was, especially all that cop talk. That's by far the best part of it, because it's like once they start talking about cops, you kind of like see where everyone's at. Because I mean, everyone else, or not everyone else, but like when they were talking the rest of the time, they're all like, yeah, blah blah blah. They had some disagreements, but when they talk about cops, it was like Michael Mouse was 100% anti-cop, and he wasn't gonna let it go. He's not gonna go away from that position. And Alex Jones is like, I guess maybe, I don't know, 50%. Let's say 50%. He's like, yeah, I'm anti-cop, blah, blah. But like you're saying, the butt. It's like you're not really. Yeah. And then Tim Pool is kind of like, he's trying to like be like moderator, so he's kind of like trying to understand, I guess, because he is trying to play that journalist type of mentality or whatever.
There's this wonderful video that I think I may have clipped out at some point. So if I find it, I'll send it to you. But on Nightshade, Michael Malice's show, he's sitting there doing his show, and you see that he looks like past the camera, and he's like, what is that? Who is that? And he was like, I thought no one, this was during the pandemic. He's like, why are there people in the studio? I thought we weren't allowing people in the studio. Mm-hmm. And the guy goes, oh, well, those are New York cops that we've brought in for part of, I don't know if it was Anthony Cumia's show or someone else. Yeah. He's like, but they're giving them the tour. And he was like, get them out of here. Like it was so immediate of, I don't want these people in here. Fuck them. Get them out. And it was like, I need to find it, because if you haven't seen that, it's well worth, like, the reaction is priceless. So I'll have to send that to you. But Malice is very good about talking about the cop issue from his perspective, because he lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And, the gun laws there are atrocious. And so he has no time for people who will bring their own guns over to his house if he has a gun, to make sure it's taken away from him. Like he's against anyone who stops him from protecting himself. And I think that's just, it's such an incredible way to talk about it, because most people, when you talk about cops, don't speak about it in that way. They just talk about, oh, well, the cop did this. Oh, the cop killed this guy. But when you go, oh, well, the cops, real cops that most people would stand for in New York, are willing to take guns off of people and take away their protection. And that's such a great way to talk about it. And so I think he's pretty good at that. But I can't wait to get to that part of that episode, because I haven't seen it yet. And Twitter went wild when that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it must be frustrating for someone like Malice, where, he loves that area, he loves the city and everything like that. But knowing that the laws there are just absolute bullshit, he's probably like, man, because I mean, he probably would move somewhere else that's more lenient, more free, but he just loves that place so much that he just wants to see it different, so that must be real frustrating.
Well, and that's what's great for I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, so I have the freedom and the rebellious part just naturally built into me.
Yeah.
And good football. But but that's what's funny is I, because of where I'm from, like I've never been drawn to cities. Like I lived when I worked at a job in Atlanta, I lived outside of Atlanta. I didn't live in the city. Yeah. I never lived in Birmingham proper. I always lived outside, because for me, I really value, if I can get it, my space, because I really would prefer, I like spending time with people. I like having friends over and doing all of that, but I like to be able to recess and be alone with my family. Yeah. It's like, it was so funny because my friends were like, oh, what are we going to do about Thanksgiving? My mom doesn't want to have anyone over because of this, or this person can't come over because of that. And I'm just like, oh, thank God I can be alone with my family this year. With no excuses.
Yeah. That's nice. So do want to talk about one last thing before we end it here. So we did a poll in our Patreon to talk about which weird news story that we want to mention with you. Mm-hmm. And so I'll go ahead and share the winner. And this is the headline. This is from Nar City. I believe it's, I think it's a Canadian website. Yeah, Canadian right there. So someone called 911 in Ontario because the illegal drugs they ordered never arrived.
Oh,
And yeah,
that's so funny. And honestly, I love it because I was having a conversation with Warren Dent, who he's on Twitter. It's Dent in the World. I don't know if you have.
Oh yeah, I think I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
We were talking, and he said the cop issue or prostitution, or I forget what it was, but the legal side of libertarian theory, which it's all legal. I mean, let's not pretend it's anything other than a political ideology. But he said he never thought about prostitution and why it should be legal until he had a personal conversation with Malice, who said, well, if you knew a prostitute and she got hurt or stolen from, don't you think that she should be able to call the police to help her? Or do you want her to not have that help? And he said that changed his mind immediately. And like, honestly, this, if it were not a stupid story of someone being an idiot, how great would it be if someone who bought drugs and had them stolen could actually call a security force to help them? How great would that be? I don't want them to do drugs. I tried weed a couple times and threw up like half the time. So I don't do that. But imagine someone like I had a friend a couple years ago who sold weed, and he bought a bunch of it because his mom was on chemo and he needed to help her with her bills as she was doing the cancer treatments. And a guy rolled up to his car and stole all of the weed that he'd just purchased.
Damn.
And I was like, I wish that guy could have called the police and said, hey, my entire life savings, my entire business was just stolen. Can you help me? But he couldn't, and he just lost it all. And luckily, non-violently, no one got hurt. They scoped it out and stole it out of his car. But it's hilarious. But like, I wish that could be a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And so on this, in this article, there is a video from the area that it happened, the police department. And they said, yeah, this is their tweet. And it says, yes, this really happened. No, this is not a joke. The hashtag OPP is urging all residents to use 911 when there is an hashtag emergency. All other non-emergent calls should be directed. And then they give a phone number. Yeah, so basically the cops are telling you, hey, that's not how you use the 911, or you can't call the police for that. Come on, call it for something more important, like, someone stole your shoes or something like that,
Of course, yeah, so they can come over, make a police report, and then walk away and never think about it again.
Right, or it takes forever, and it's like, you got to call them multiple times. Hey, you working on my case? Oh, yeah, we're working on your case. Yeah, we'll work on it. 4 years later, still working on it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny is a friend of mine had her car stolen, and she went to the police, and they never looked for it. Jeez. They legitimately never looked for it. A friend of hers happened to be driving to a restaurant and pulled into the restaurant, and their car was sitting outside of the restaurant. And so they were able to come and go to the restaurant. The cops didn't look for it at all, never saw it. And then they took their keys, went and got their car, drove it back. The next night, it was stolen again. Like, the guy just came back and got it again. But it sucked. And, they were able to, luckily their insurance plan or something helped them out. But it was this very obvious moment of, wow, the police are not here to help me. And that was a big turning point for her. And I was like, well, you got lucky for a second. That's
yeah,
probably the saddest.
Yeah, you're able to find your own car, and then sadly you had to get it stolen again.
Yeah, because she was so excited when she posted on Facebook, we found our car. This person saw it at the restaurant. We were able to pick it up, and the next day she was like, the car's gone again. And it was one of those, like, I engage with the world and sad things with dark humor. It's just part of who I am. And so like she got really mad at me because she told me that, and I laughed so hard.
It's like this like really ridiculous situation that you're in. You had your car and it was stolen that day, and then you called the cops. They didn't help you. They weren't even looking for your car at all. And then one day out of the clear blue sky, you find your car at this restaurant. You get your car back, and then you get it stolen again.
It was like that night. The guy was like, they took their car back, and he went back to their house, picked it up, and left. And I'm like, you couldn't have put it in a garage.
Like, yeah. And now also, I mean, I don't know, like the rest of the story in terms of like she got the car back or anything like that, but that person now knows where you live. So yeah, you gotta do something there. You gotta have some kind of security blanket. Maybe maybe get a gun or something, or
like a mounted turret that automatically shoots people.
Yeah, like specifically for this person's face. Like when you scan this guy's face and he's there, you just blow that guy away. Yeah, you kill that motherfucker. All right. Well, Cam, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on. If you want to go ahead and plug anything that you got, go ahead.
I can do that. If you desire to find me and my dirty jokes on Twitter, you can just type in "This is MLGA." Anything you want to find with me is "This is MLGA." I used to have a Patreon. I don't anymore. But when Facebook kicked my 4-year-old group off the same day as Dave Smith on our 4-year anniversary, we moved over to Locals. And so we have makelibертygreatagain.locals.com where we're residing at this point. But yeah, this is MLGA.com. You'll be able to find all the backlog of all of my audio podcasts, which I think probably my favorite ones are the Red Pills, where I did narrative deep dives of actually they were pretty short, so it was a deep dive on my side, short and concise for the people. Those are I did Waco and I did Ruby Ridge, and those were a lot of fun. So I mean, I would check those out if you want to. Other than that, I do have a YouTube, and I live stream typically on Wednesdays. So obviously you and Nico are invited at any point in time to come and hang out. It's the same kind of thing, free form conversation, and we can get deep or say horribly dirty stuff, whatever you want to do, whatever is on your radar.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan to me. Yeah, whenever you want us on, we'll definitely be happy to oblige. But yeah, to everyone watching and listening, thank you so much, and we will see you in the next one.
Sweet.